All right, greetings Scratchers. These are some super fast videos covering the basics of Scratch, but only the cool stuff. The reason I'm doing these is I have a lot of students who came back after summer break who are advanced but forgot some of the simple tricks that make really super cool stuff happen in your games. And I also have new kids starting, and I wanted to give them something that was very exciting right off the bat. Not basic basics, but real cool trick basics. So let me cruise over and let's boot up Scratch. Now in our class we're still using 1.4, and we're doing that because we can compile our code and we can make executables so that it'll run on anyone's computer. So there's still a few advantages to Scratch 1.4 for basic programming. This tutorial is going to cover how to do scrolling, as in Mario style games, and it's going to be so simple that it's just going to take a few minutes to show you. So we're going to start off with our Scratch Cat here, and we're going to need to have some basic code for him. So let me go ahead and we will start our program the way we always do, with our green flag, which just tells us that that is where the program is going to start. And then, like most styles of programming, we're going to use a forever loop, which just tells it after you start the program, go ahead and loop through whatever events are inside of that forever loop. So we want it to not do the same thing every time, so we're going to zip over here and we're going to grab an if statement, meaning that when something happens, each time it goes through this loop, it's going to do it. It's going to execute whatever is inside of the if statement. So it'll happen if the condition which appears in this little box is accepted. So we're going to get the simplest thing there too, and we're going to cruise over to sensing because we want it to sense something, which is going to be the press of a key. We're going to grab our key press, bring it over, and when our, let's say when our right arrow is pressed, we want something to happen each time it goes through the loop when our right arrow is pressed. And we're going to do that again. Let's go ahead and we're going to grab another if, because we also want to have our character be able to do more than one thing. We want to have him move forward and backward if we're going to do scrolling. So I'm going to grab another if statement, and we're going to cruise back on over, and we're going to grab that key press again, and we will simply drop this down and select left arrow. So now we have a loop that will repeat over and over again once the program starts. Each time the right arrow is pressed, whatever happens in this loop will be executed. Each time the left arrow is pressed, whatever happens inside of this if statement is going to be executed. So we're doing great. Okay, so go ahead and click on variables, and from here we're going to select make a variable. Now a variable is just a value that can change. So it's just like algebra. You might have x equals 1 or x equals 100. It's just a value that can change, and it will keep track of it, and we have to give it a name. So let's call it scroll x. So we call our new variable scroll x, and as soon as we do that, it comes up and here's scroll x waiting for us. And we also have a number of options that appear for how we can treat our variables. So let's bring out change, and we're going to put that under our first if statement, and bring out another copy of change and put that under our next if statement, because we're going to have, when this arrow key is pressed, we're going to have it change the value of x. X being the coordinate, as you're probably familiar with, that is your side-to-side coordinate, your I was going to say longitudinal coordinate, but that doesn't help, does it? So, but you're moving side to side is x, and if you wanted to have a character scroll up and down for, say, a space game, you can use a scroll y, since your y is usually your up and down coordinate. So let's go ahead. This determines the speed at which you're going to move across the ground. I know from experience that a -6 is a very good speed for our right arrow, and a +6, just 6, is good for our left arrow, and that'll give him sort of a sprightly motion. So now we have to create that ground. So this first star will let you create a new sprite, and we're going to create the ground. So I'm just going to do a simple ground. You can be as complicated as you would like to be. My ground is just going to be kind of a jaggy line here. You want to make sure that it's a bit random. I've had students that made a perfectly symmetrical ground, and then you couldn't tell when it was moving, because even though it was moving, it was so perfectly symmetrical that you couldn't see that, that one part was in another part's position. So I'll go ahead and continue my ground there. We'll make kind of a little jitter there, something for our cat to stumble over if we'd like to, and we'll bring the ground all the way across. So we'll say OK. So for that sprite, that ground sprite, we now want to go ahead and we're going to create a little bit of code. So we'll do what we always do here. We're going to want to have that code start executing at the same time. So bring the green flag out, and we're going to want to have it do a forever loop so that it keeps checking to find out if the ground should be moving or not moving. So here is our first command that's a little teeny tiny bit complicated, but not at all. This is going to go very fast. Head on over to motion, and we're going to do set X. As soon as I find it here, I remember the command. I don't see where it is. We're going to do set X. There we go, set X to 0. So this would ordinarily set your X position of your sprite to 0. And you know what? I'm going to move my ground down just to make it look nice and pretty there. So there, our ground is on our ground, and we'll put our cat on the ground too. So there we go, X equals 0, but we want that to change. So we're going to use our variable. But jump over to operators first. I want you to pull down the operator with a plus and the operator with a star, which is multiplication. Take the one with a star and put it into the second blank on plus. So here we have something plus something times something. And we're going to put that all into our set x2 coordinate there. So because the width of our screen is 480 pixels, we are going to go ahead and put 480 here, 480. And we're going to use our variable since we want that value to change. And we're going to take scroll x and put it here. So here's kind of a neat, tricky thing. In this last blank, go ahead and put a 0. And what this is going to do, I know it sounds funny to multiply 480 by 0 since you're always going to get 0 and you'll only have your scroll x value. But there's a reason for that makes it really easy when you're adding additional length to your ground. So right now we've actually completed the simplest scrolling application. So under our cat, again, we've got our forever loop with our right and left arrow keys, and it changes the scroll x value. And under our sprite, we have a simple code that simply says set x to whatever this changing value is plus 480 times 0 at this point. So let's give it a go. I'm going to push the green flag, and now when I push the right arrow, that little piece of ground scrolls to the right. When I push the left arrow, that little piece of ground scrolls to the left. We can cover in additional videos how to have the character move also over the ground so he can move from one side of the screen to the other. But for the moment, let's just stick with the simplest possible outcome. So the last thing we need to do to make this really cool and have our character go somewhere from land to land is cruise on over and create another sprite. So there we go. This is going to be sprite 3 when we're done with it. And we're going to do the ground again. So just to show the difference between the grounds, I'll go ahead and draw this particular fancy jaggy line in red. There we go, a little bumpy hill there. And this can just be any random ground you would like to have. I'm going to bring that across, and we'll say OK. Now we want to have the same code that we did for sprite 2 for sprite 3. So let's do it the easy way, and we will just duplicate this, and I'm going to go ahead and drop it over here. Now you can, if you'd prefer, you can always put it in there a step at a time. Now the one change you want to make for sprite 3, remember we did that multiply by 0 that seems strange. Change this to a 1. And what that's going to do is it's going to space over your second ground by 480. So you can add as many of these sprites as you would like. Just keep creating sections of ground, any type of ground you like. And for each new piece of ground, you'll just add 1 to this. So for the next section of ground over, this would be a 2. For the next section of ground over, this would be a 3. So that's the reason that we did this little multiplication in here, so that it's very easy for you to create as much ground without having to create a lot of code. So I'm going to bring this ground down so it's about the right level. I guess first I have to stop the execution of the program. We'll bring that down so it's the right level. This time when we start it, it's going to position those grounds. I got a little bit of overlap there, so you can account for that by going in and modifying your drawings. And now when I do the right and left arrows, we have our black ground that scrolls, and then our red ground scrolls across as well. So I can see that I drew a little beyond here the width of the bottom of the level there. So all you have to do is modify that ground so that it does go fully off screen, and you can scroll from land to land to your heart's content. And perhaps in our next video, we'll cover a little bit of character animation. So you want to do that right now? Hey, we got a couple extra moments. Let's do it. Let's go ahead and we'll do a little bit of character animation. So we're going to come back to our sprite. As you know, whenever that cat comes up, we look at costumes. We click on the costumes tab, and we have 2 costumes for him where his legs are in 2 different positions. So why don't we go ahead and we will go ahead and create a little costume for him, and we'll do that in the script section. And we're going to do that under looks, of course, and we're going to say switch costume when he's walking to costume number 2, and we'll do it again, switch costume to costume number 1. So one of these will be number 1 and number 2. So now when he walks across the land, his legs are going to move back and forth. However, the computer is so fast, that if we were to just have it do that as quickly as it can, he would probably look spastic. Why don't we take a look? We'll see how spastic he looks. Let's see how he looks when he moves right now. Oh, he only moved once because he's so fast we can't see him doing the jump in between. So we're going to add a little short delay in there, and I'm going to make this say 0.05 seconds. That's half a second. That's probably too long. We'll do 100th. 0.05. That's better. And then we'll do it again for our next section here, and we'll say 0.05. So all that is a little delay. So each time it switch costumes, you have a chance to see that. So let's go ahead and we'll go again. We'll see now if he kind of moves along the land. Oh boy, he's kind of peeling out. So we would adjust that delay so that his motion across the ground would look more realistic. And we can adjust the speed of the ground to make it really realistic. But there goes our cat cruising on Mario style. Jumping is in another video that I have. Go back and check on the page. And hey guys, thanks for checking it out.